Recording in progress.
Strongly believes the importance of environment protection and energy efficiency in order to achieve a sustainable future for mankind. Thus, our technological commitment will foster mutual betterment of our allied companies, customers, shareholders, and employees. Tide pledges to always hold their management philosophy and values at heart. Until now, the meter readers have had to do manual meter reading. This existing manual process is time and money consuming work. This makes it hard for us to detect blackout and manage energy demands. And it makes us hard to manage loss during transmission and distribution. As a result, this existing manual process makes grid unsmarter. But TOT's end-to-end AMI solutions will connect the user with utility companies. TOT's intelligent AMI solutions will solve many problems from the existing manual process. We can reduce time and money spent metering manually. We can manage blackout and loss during distribution. We can do demand response, TOU. Finally, we can make grid smarter. AMI service. Meter reading information of household is call-cited by modem and DCU. There are two types of smart meter, internal and external. Smart meter sends metering data to modem via serial communication. Modem sends metering data to DCU via PLC communication. DCU sends metering data to server via fiber optic and cellular network. On-time monitoring and detection of electrical loss. TOU, time of USA flexible tariffs. Connectivity to electric vehicle charging system. Connection of renewable energy and battery with bidirectional metering. Reliable collection rate improving monitoring of power quality. Making grid smarter and more efficient. A hidden champion in the energy IoT solution industry. Tide.
Saat ini, segalanya cepat, segalanya mudah, segalanya praktis. Semudah jari Anda menekan ke sebuah tombol. Kami menemani Anda dalam setiap kemudahan itu.
Di tengah persaingan industri digital yang semakin pesat, kami terus berkomitmen untuk memberikan pelayanan prima, sehingga kami bisa menjadi pilihan utama sebagai penyedia layanan di industri teknologi informasi dan komunikasi nasional.
Didirikan pada tahun 2000, Icon Plus pada awalnya berfokus untuk mendukung teknologi dan sistem informasi PT PLN Persero dalam proses bisnis ketenaga listrikan dari hulu ke hilir.
Kami tidak hanya bereaksi terhadap perubahan, tetapi kami menciptakannya. Dari mulai komoditas jaringan sebagai dukungan terbaik bagi ketenaga listrikan,
kami mampu membangun kompetensi yang kuat dalam layanan strategis, terutama dalam hal konektivitas, ketenaga listrikan, dan juga multisektor lainnya. Saat ini, kami menjadi perusahaan yang digerakkan oleh teknologi dan kompetensi untuk membuat ekosistem digital terpusat dengan platform Smart Nation terintegrasi.
Kami menyediakan layanan untuk solusi konektivitas, solusi akses internet, solusi berbasis infrastruktur telekomunikasi, dan solusi value added service, serta aplikasi dengan tingkat availability dan reliability terbaik kepada pelanggan Icon Plus. Sehingga Icon Plus dapat menjadi one-stop solution provider telekomunikasi di era digital dan modernisasi global.
kami didukung oleh jaringan yang tersebar luas di seluruh wilayah Jawa, Bali, Sumatera, Sulawesi, dan Kalimantan. Untuk menghadirkan layanan prima, kami memiliki kantor strategik bisnis unit dan kantor-kantor perwakilan di hampir seluruh kota besar di Indonesia. Di samping coverage area yang luas, kami juga memiliki ultra broadband untuk memastikan konektivitas pelanggan menjangkau seluruh wilayah dengan kecepatan tinggi.
Kami siap menjadi mitra terbaik yang bisa memberikan kepastian untuk kemajuan bersama dan terus menjadi lebih baik.
Visi kami menjadi penyedia solusi teknologi informasi dan komunikasi terkemuka di Indonesia berbasis jaringan melalui pemanfaatan aset strategis.
Icon Plus, we speak beyond connectivity.
The various stakeholders in the French smart grid sector may be found on this diagram: network management and operations. These solutions deliver cost savings and technical improvements to networks. New uses. These solutions encompass e-mobility, smart homes, and smart buildings. Of the prosumer. Prosumers are active participants in the energy market, thanks to smart meters and self-consumption. Integration of renewable resources. These solutions help manage the challenge of renewable energy intermittency. Use of data. Energy data is put to use to offer new services to consumers and local authorities. Research and expertise. Members of this sector offer smart grid-related training and consultancy services. France, including overseas departments and collectivities, aims to generate 32% of the energy it consumes from renewable sources by 2030. Since 2008, 121 pilot demonstration projects around the country have helped hone France's expertise in smart grid operational technologies and features. From 2008 to 2014, €500 million has been invested in R&D, putting France top of the European League. Now, this experience and the French government's call for proposals for large-scale smart grid projects has resulted in projects being rolled out in several regions by the successful applicants: FlexGrid, Grid, and Smile. These smart grid projects span several regions and focus upon the 6 key aspects of the French smart grid sector, promoting French expertise in this field on the international stage.
ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. For those who joined the webinar from Asia, especially in Indonesia, may I have your attention, please? The webinar is about to begin. Our honorable speakers and distinguished guests, I'm very grateful to be here, accompanied by inspiring speakers from reputable organizations and have strong experiences in the industry. I am Haryadi Akmala Putri, Vice President Public Relations of PT PLN Persero. Today, I will conduct our great event as moderator. On behalf of the Indonesian Electrical Power Society, IEPS, or Masyarakat Ketenagalistrikan Indonesia, MKI, I would like to welcome you on our third episode of webinar entitled The Road Ahead for E-Mobility and Electric Vehicles, which is supported by PT PLN Persero and sponsored by Tide, Huawei, KEPCO, Hitachi, ABB Power Grid, Siemens, ABB Sakti Industry, Trillion, GE Grid Solutions, Mitsubishi Power, Icon Plus, and in partnership with Think Smart Grid Friends in Energy Academy Indonesia, EKADIN. Okay. Today's webinar is the third episode of 10 series hosted by Masyarakat Ketenagalistrikan Indonesia regarding smart grid taken place in April 2021 to January 2022. Many studies have revealed that electrification represents one of the biggest technological development in transportation. Today's webinar will feature Indonesian government representative and expert from around the world on ecosystem in shifting internal combustion engine to electric vehicles for strengthening Indonesia energy resiliencies and worldwide best practices to expedite the e-mobility adoption in Indonesia. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items that you need to know how to participate in today's webinar. All participants can submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your question into chat box at any time during the speaker presentation. Mention your name and organization and to whom the questions are posted. We will collect the questions and address them during our Q&A session. This webinar is live streamed via YouTube MKI IEPS and reminds that after event, we provide a presence form posted on chat room in Zoom and live chat on YouTube, and please fill in there. You will get an e-certificate for this webinar participation, as well as presentation materials via email within 5 working days at the latest. Okay. As a request from the organizing committee, we will conduct a photo session with all speakers. So please, all speakers, maybe you can switch on your camera for a while. I will count down 3, 2, 1 for taking picture. Ready? Okay, give your best smile. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Now, we would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Hotmatua Bakara, EVP of Corporate Planning, PT PLN Persero. And without spending more time, I would like to welcome Mr. Hotmatua Bakara to deliver the keynote speech. So, Mr. Bakara, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Bu Haryadi. Okay, maybe I will try to prepare my presentation. How the slideshow is. It's covered with the Okay, I would like to start my presentation. First, good afternoon, honorable speakers, and also distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you to MKI for giving this opportunity for me to speak in MKI Smart Grid webinar series entitled The Road Ahead for E-Mobility and Electric Vehicle. And I would like to introduce myself, as already been mentioned by the moderator, Bu Arsyadani. I'm Hotmarto Bakara. Currently, I'm the Executive Vice President for Corporate Planning Division of PLN. I'm here representing Mr. Evi Haryadi, PLN's Corporate Planning Director, that since he has other meeting, he cannot join this very important forum. Therefore, allow me to extend his regret for not being able to directly participate in this webinar. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, without further ado, allow me to start my presentation. Okay, for increasing the energy conservation in the transportation sector and realizing clean energy and environmentally friendly, as well as Indonesia's commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emission, the government of Indonesia has launched Presidential Decree number 55 in year 2019 regarding the acceleration program of battery electric vehicle, or BEV, for road transportation. So referring to Article 23 in this regulation, PLN was assigned to support and develop at the first stage the provisions of EV infrastructure in Indonesia. And PLN will play a role in cooperation with other companies to develop the EV infrastructure and EV ecosystem in Indonesia. Furthermore, according to Article 3 of the decree, the acceleration program of BEV for road transportation should be conducted through, first, the acceleration for developing national BEV industry and also provisions of incentives, and third, the development of EV infrastructure and regulations of charging tariff for EV, and fourth, compliance with the BEV technical requirements, and fifth, the protections of the environment. And according to Article 22, PLN implements the acceleration program through the development of first, electric vehicle charging station, and also battery swap facility. And looking at the electricity supply in Indonesia, condition in Indonesia, PLN is ready to support the development of EV infrastructure. The electricity supply capacity is highly sufficient around the nation, and most of the system have reserved more than 30%. And also, PLN has already had the roadmap for the development of the electric vehicle infrastructure. The infrastructure for EV charging system, or we call it the SPKLU, is projected to increase exponentially from 2020 to 2025 under the scheme of privately owned and also privately operated, or we call it a POPO, and company owned and company operated, or COCO. The assumption for this roadmap is that the EV charging station will be built 40% by PLN and 60% by partners. The ratio for each type of EV charging is 50% for slow charging, and 30% for normal or medium charging, and 20% for fast charging. So meanwhile, the infrastructure for battery swap, or SPBKLU, is projected to increase exponentially from 2020 to 2030, with estimated demand for two-wheeler battery swap will be 2.7 million in 2030. At this stage, the battery swap station estimated 88,000 units in 2030, with the assumption for the roadmap are 50% of the two-wheelers in Indonesia will be battery swap users. And also a projected market share on battery swap is 35% owned by PLN. Here is also PLN has already had the standard. We already provide the standard for the EV charging station. The standard regulates the technical specifications of EV charging, consisting of level 1 for private home and slow charging, and level 2 for normal charging, and level 3 for fast charging. You can see in the slides, the maximum output and also output for the current and also for the power. And I would like also to inform you the progress for EV charging station infrastructure. Now PLN already built 24 units of EV charging station in main cities such as Jakarta, Tangerang, Bandung, Semarang, dan Pasar, and at the intercity highway. PLN is also in progress to build other 60 EV charging stations within this year. And also PLN has already built an e-mobility platform to support the EV ecosystem. So we call it this platform Charge-in. The platform will increase the consumer experience in using the infrastructure. And also, we already launched home charging with a special scheme and attractive discounts for electric vehicle users who want to charge at home. The home charging is integrated with the Charge-in and also the PLN mobile application. This integration will help the consumer to monitor the electricity usage and monitor the progress of the charged EV. Consumers also will be able to be notified when the discount off-peak hours is available. Yeah, so in line with the assignment of EV infrastructure from the government, PLN currently already has 7,100 units of light vehicles or two-wheeler charger stations, or we call it the SPLU, at 3,348 locations around Indonesia, which later could be developed and converted to be SPKLU or charging stations, and also SPBKLU or battery swap stations. And in carrying out the assignments to prepare the EV charging station infrastructure, PLN has several programs that are being carried out to support the development of the EV infrastructure and ecosystem in Indonesia. Firstly, we actively join collaboration and joint marketing with EV players to develop the infrastructure and ecosystem. And second, ensuring the electricity capacity supply around Indonesia. Third, developing e-mobility platform, as already been explained, and also try to provide a win-win EV charging station business model schemes, referring to Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources Regulations number 13 in year 2020. And fifth, providing the program free capacity upgrading beyond the limit to facilitate customers who need to power up the capacity to support home charging. Sixth, providing an attractive 30% discount tariff for EV charging at home at off-peak hours. And here is the Indonesia EV ecosystem. which PLN will play a role in developing the EV ecosystem in Indonesia. The ecosystem has been forming and continue to grow as shown in the slide. It will consist of first the fleet operators and battery and EV manufacturer and EV charging provider and EV owners, and also a payment system and property owners, and also the research and development. Okay, in accordance with the directions of the government in the regulation, PLN has joint collaboration with the EV players to develop the EV ecosystem. This collaboration realized through the signing of the MOU with 20 strategic partners in 2019. And also in the context of developing EV infrastructure and ecosystem in Indonesia, would like to inform you also that the SOE Ministry has formed a JV between PLN, Pertamina, Mine ID, Antam to create Indonesia Battery Corporation. The company focused on developing the battery industry from upstream to downstream battery business. This company will collaborate with world-class manufacturers to encourage the accelerations of the national electric vehicle industry. And this is to show you the value chain of the battery industry. And the slide shows the battery industry value chain from upstream to downstream, which consists of first the upstream, the raw material industry that's responsible for mining, refining, also producing battery precursor and cathode to cathode, and midstream area for battery manufacture industry responsible for battery cell and pack, and third, the downstream area will carry out the EV development and electricity supply and energy storage systems and EV infrastructures and battery recycle. And the total investment required is estimated to reach around 13.4 to 17.4 billion US dollars. And this is the timeline of EV battery industry. The timeline is based on the agreement among SOE Ministry or Kementerian BUMN and Investment Coordinating Board or BKPM and Coordinating Ministry or for Maritime and Investment Affairs or Kemenko Marves. The progress started by selecting candidate partner for EV battery and energy storage system development in 2020 and creating the JV company in 2021, and will continue by EV production in 2022, operation for refining, precursor and cathode, and also cell to pack plants, and fulfillment of EV and ESS adoption in the new capital city in 2026. I think this is the end of my presentation, some information that I can give you for this opportunity. Thank you for having me in this forum, and I hope the information that I give will be valuable for you, especially for encouraging the development of the e-mobility and electric vehicle in Indonesia. And thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bakara, for the inspiring presentation on development of EV infrastructure and EV ecosystem in Indonesia. From Mr. Bakara presentation, we find interesting insight. Pak Bakara, let me just ask one thing. Can you explain more to us how to elaborate benefits for Indonesia if we implement EV ecosystem sooner, and what are obstacles or and challenge of implementation EV on the field?
Well, I think we can implement, if we implement the EV ecosystem, it will be accelerated and will be the fastest way to increase the EV penetration in Indonesia. sure that we need partners to accelerate this implementation. And increasing the EV penetration will help to achieve the climate action scenario set by the government. One of the scenarios is to curb the emissions from the transportation sector, meanwhile increasing the renewable penetration in the electricity sector. So for PLN itself, it would help to increase electricity use per capita. And in addition, I think, as we know that PLN is net importers for oil, so we can also reduce our imports from oil, imports in oil. Yeah. And I think the major challenge maybe will be faced by governments, especially how the government should prepare a systematic plan through regulation and incentives, how to create an attractive demand side incentive that should be provided to accelerate the EV penetration and to support the ecosystem. And also maybe we have to consider also the shifting of the IC industries to EV industries should be mitigated, I think, by preparing a systematic plan for economic infrastructure and capabilities built by the community. I think that is my answer, a very short answer, Madam Haryadi. So thank you very much.
Very clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Batara. We are harvesting optimism about the future of electric vehicle in Indonesia, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, as a reminder, the attendees can submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into chat box on Zoom or via live chat on YouTube at any time during the presentation. And don't forget, please mention your name and organization and to whom the questions are posted. We will then collect the questions and address them during our Q&A session. Before the presentation from our next speaker, let me read short profile of our speaker, Mr. K. Han Lee. Okay, he graduated from Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology University in Master of Business Administration and hold Master of Applied Mathematics, and now is Vice President of Karzin Tide and Vice President Smart Grid Division of Daily Blockchain. And Mr. K is professor at Sejong University and president of MSN Korea branch. Well, without further ado, I invite Mr. K to deliver presentation. Hello, Mr. K.
Just a moment, I'm trying to share my screen first.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Oh, not yet. Everybody can see the, okay, already.
Oh, you can't see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Time is yours, Mr. K.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, Zoom sent me Zoom kit unexpectedly.
Oh, Mr. K. Okay. Okay.
Okay, Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see your presentation slide.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know why suddenly Zoom quit and it restarted. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. So let's start. Okay, this is Kelly from Charging Tide. I am responsible for marketing and the IR for charging companies. Nowadays, I am focusing on the IR to get more investment. So if there is anyone who work with us, please let me know. Can you see? You can see, my email address. And at the end of this presentation, you also can see my slide. Okay. Let's start with the Bloomberg article recently. This article talk about the overall status of the EV penetration across the world. It's very optimistic about the overall penetration forecasting. Even in 2040, they forecast China will be the #1 in terms of the ratio of whole car sales. EV will occupy about 78% of whole car sales, and followed by EU and US and EU. And if you see the left up below side, in closing comment of this article, they talk about 3 possible hurdles of EV growth. The first thing is the challenge of building charging infrastructure. And the second one is the possibility of a rollback of the current government incentives. The third one is maybe the lack of battery minerals. So I will talk about today how we solve the challenge of building for the charging infrastructure. So EV market will grow firstly as the Biden administration keep pushing, this infrastructure and also the EV growth. Every country across the world, they target, the zero emission accomplishment by, 2040 or around 2050. So we are very optimistic about the EV market growth. Also, EV charging market will also grow. So this is the forecasting from the several different research centers. They are very optimistic about the charging infrastructure. But I think this EV charging market growth can really solve the overall charging problems. So building charging infrastructure, it's really related with the penetration of e-mobility around the two-wheel vehicle and the electric vehicles. They will grow as we saw the overall market forecasting. The other two important thing is the charging site and the availability of electricity power. So it's really good to see Indonesia had sufficient electricity to provide the charging infrastructure. in terms of building charging infra, we think the public area will be full of DC charger soon. So now the government and the car manufacturer, they are rushing to build the DC fast charger, especially for the public areas. But the real challenge lies how we meet the building the charging infra around the office buildings and the residential areas. So now the government and the car manufacturers, they really focusing on giving users the kind of safer thinking. Okay, please buy the electric EV. We will provide enough charging facilities. But will it really, by building the public areas, and the roadside charging infrastructure will solve the convenience of the EV users, charging problems. So up to now, the overall EV charging infra market is now being driven by chargers. So they are rushing into building charging facility itself now, especially to give, especially for the public areas. They just want to convince EV users they can easily access the charging infrastructure. But based on our experience in this industry, it just gives some kind of safer zone mindset, but it doesn't solve the real convenience of the EV users. So we learned from Jeju Island's CFI. The Jeju Island is the among Asian people, it's the most wanted tourist place. So Jeju Island started their own CFI. CFI means Carbon Island, Carbon-Free Island Initiative from early 2010s. So they really push it, the overall penetration of EV, and also they build their public and private chargers. You can see the center of this slide, how they build and where are they now. So if you compare the number of EV registered and the number of chargers across the island, it's almost 1-to-1. But based on their internal call centers, actually Jeju Island, they are running their own call center, EV call center, and about 80% of their call related with where is the chargers. That means the current, the rush around building the charging infrastructure on the public area, like the expressway or gas stations and convenience store, it can solve the convenience of EV users, charging demands. So in this previous slide, we need to solve the real how we build charging infrastructure around the apartment and office buildings, and how we can achieve parking equal to charging visions. So it's very similar to the concept of smartphone charging. Please think of if you should go to the charging place, charge your smartphone. Are you willing to use your smartphone as nowadays? It will be very inconvenient. So we learned from the Jeju Islands past 3-4 years experience, and we thought the real charging infrastructure is come from building the easy accessible infrastructure inside office building and the residential area, especially for the apartment and condos.
Sorry to remind your presentation time only 5 minutes.
Okay, so charging is really specialized for that areas. We provide EVG, electric vehicle zone platforms. So we have about 32 members here, and they are really expertise in car and electricity areas. So we provide EVG platform, and the building owners and charging manufacturers or charger operators, we provide the platforms. So we can support the DC chargers, every kind of chargers. So now in Korea, there are several different kinds of players in charging industries. And now they are moving into like the charger hardware manufacturer and the software platform providers. So charging started from SI. Now Charge EV is the biggest charging service provided inside Korea. We learned with this Charge EV, and now EV Journey is the separated platform charging service layers. So this is our diagram to support different kinds of chargers and different needs of the service providers. So we support OCPP global protocol and OCPI protocol for the communication among the different charger service operators and different chargers. So for the user perspective, this we mainly provide a smart outlet accordance with the platforms. This smart outlet work on the just the general outlet. So if you install this smart outlet, you can change the open outlet to the charging infrastructure. This support BLE communication. So you don't need to have any communication modules inside here. So in cost-wise and the operation cost-wise, it provides very economical way to provide the charging service. This consists of the EVG module and smartphone app and the server side. So this hardware only work with through the BLE communications. So through the smartphone app, you can open and close that hardware. And in server side, it controls the overall users' authentications and also payment. So this is how we work through the EVG platforms. So in your country, there are lots of two-wheel electric vehicle. So this is the charging stations, and even you can charge through the outlet for this kind of two-wheel e-mobility. And also there might be lots of kickboard on the street. And also there are lots of 5 Also, this can provide this kind of thing. Okay, I will hurry up. And also, this is for the GAFE. You can control the overall usage of the consumer users, and also this can provide the strip pole charging infrastructure. Also, we are now working with TIDE to work with the buildings and the apartments limited electricity capacities. So TIDE, EMS, and AMI works with our charging platform to communicate the availability of the electricity and control the capacity of the charging platforms, chargers, electricity usage. So in summary, this our TIDE and EVG solution can provide the reliable and very cost-effective charging infrastructure for the office building and the apartments without any additional investment into the electricity infrastructures.
Well, I'm sorry, time is over.
This is for my presentations.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. K. Our mindset here are now opened by your presentation, and I suppose there are many questions from participants regarding your presentation. Your success story on development EV platform and ecosystem inspired us regarding PLN, have developed a key platform named Charge-in, as stated by Mr. Bakara. Well, thank you very much. Once again,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Once again, I remind all of you, don't hesitate to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into Q&A box on Zoom or via live chat on YouTube at any time during the presentation. Mention your name and organization and to whom the questions are posted. Okay, so let's move to our next agenda. Presentation by Mr. Doddy Pangaribuan from PLN. Mr. Doddy graduated in electronic engineering from Bandung Institute of Technology and holder master degree from HEC Montreal, Canada in business management. His career path at PLN has been proven from senior manager of corporate strategic planning at head office and then general manager of PLN in several areas such as Riau and Rio Island, Bali distribution, and currently for Jakarta Raya distribution. Let's enjoy and watch Mr. Doddy presentation about e-mobility and EV readiness in Indonesia for about 15 minutes ahead. Mr. Doddy, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Arsha, for nice introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience, especially my colleagues, all the speakers on this webinar, as assigned by the committee, I would like to share some information on the EV infrastructure development, especially in Jakarta, in my territory. If I can see from keynote speech from Pak Bakara, some of the issues that I would like to raise here already been discussed, and I would like to go thoroughly very fast on that issue, but for the rest of the presentation, I hope that this would be useful for all of us here. Please allow me to share some presentation. Yeah, this is the cover, and then next. Let me start with the agenda. There are 5 agenda that I hope to cover in this session. The first is company profile, EV background in Indonesia, and the third is PLN EV development, and the fourth EV charging infrastructure, and the last one is the PLN mobile. Next. As a company profile, this is just introduction of my responsibility with it. PLN Jakarta Distribution Office covers covering 662 kilometers square with we serve 4.82 million customers with the energy cells. Last year, 32 terawatt hours, and this year, from January to May, 13.24 terawatt hours. Next. As for Jakarta, we are quite happy that we are supplied by 6 subsystems from 500 to 150 kV with total capacity of 10,000 megawatt, while we have Jakarta peak load only 4,900 megawatt and distributed through almost 60 substations, 150 to 20 kV with reserve margin around 30%. Let me start with the EV background in Indonesia. Why Indonesia should prepare for EV era? We can see that here up to 2020 or last year, the global electric car stocks more than 10 million units. And we can see that China is leading on the battery electric vehicle. Next. While here we can see that description on per countries from China, United States, Europe, others, we can see that still the BEV is dominant. Next. And we also have here the major and more affordable battery and EV technology. When we can see here from the graph on the lower left side that the battery lithium per kilowatt hours price in rupiah has declined down to 87%, while the range on the next graph, we can see that the comparison between the models, for example, Tesla 2018 compared with the EPA combined range, this shows the efficiency of each battery electric vehicle. The unit is in the miles. Next. We have also here seen some of Indonesian EV pioneers. Started with the Grab car and then the Bluebird car and also Tesla. Next. Now we come to the PLN EV development program. It's already been raised by Pak Bakara that I think we can see that the milestone of the development of EV started by presidential regulation number 55 in 2019, and then followed by at least 7 regulation from government as well as from ministries such as energy and mineral resources, transportation ministers, internal affairs ministers, as well as the Ministry of Industry. Next. This is the PLN EV development program. Yeah, I have seen that this already been discussed by Pak Bakara, but this is also important that our role is how to ensure the availability of electricity supply. We have also been a pioneer or leader on providing the charging stations. We also provide the application for e-mobility or charge-in we have, and then we provide the incentives on tariffs and connection fees, and also we participate on the domestic battery industry as Pak Bakar already discussed. Now we come to Jakarta. What is happening in Jakarta? We have here the Jakarta Smart City concept. There are 4 pillars on the Jakarta Smart City, starting from mobile first, system and data driven technology, digital experiences, and smart collaboration. Next. We have also discuss this what we call the Jakarta Smart Electricity for Jakarta Smart City initiative with the governor of Jakarta. This picture shows when we have the discussion with Pak Anies. Next. We have also been a pioneer on the smart mobility. We provide the we utilize the electric car. We also have cooperation with the electric bus. We deploy electric motorcycle, and also we operate electric forklift on our workshops. Next. Now we come to the core of presentation according to the assignment from the committee, EV charging infrastructure. This is the data of the global charger populations. As we know that most charging is done at home and work, yet deploying publicly accessible charging point is outpacing EV sales. On the right side chart, we can see the ratio of public chargers per EV stock by country. You can see the Korea has almost 50% ratio, while in New Zealand is around 0.002 or 0.03, and the number of 0.10 we use as a basis for forecasting the number of EV charger in public. Next. This is also showing the publicly accessible chargers with the slow and fast chargers, which 30% of publicly accessible chargers are fast chargers. Next. EV ecosystem, we need to build synergy from all parties. So PLN cannot be on itself, supporting the EV by itself. So with the Jakarta Smart Electricity, we support the research and development, and then we cooperate with fleet operator, battery manufacturer, EV charging provider, EV owners, of course, and then the property owner or building management. Next. This picture also been showed by Pak Bakara, so I will skip this. What kind of infrastructures that we support here? Yeah, starting is SPLU is for the two-wheelers, SPKLU for cars, and SPBKLU for battery swap. Yeah. And also we support the home or private charger. Next. This is a standard, yeah, already been issued by APLN in 2017, starting from level 1 charger to level 3 chargers. Next. What we have here now in Jakarta, we have a DC ultra fast charger, DC fast charger, DC charger, and down to AC charger or home charger, down to portable charger. Next. As a two-wheel charging station in Jakarta only, we have 1,700 locations, and it has more than 3,000 meters. And as for your information, in 2020, we managed to sell 2,000 gigawatt hours with the revenue of more than 3.3 billion rupiah. Next. This is showing the location of EV charging system. There are 5 locations in Jakarta with 8 chargers. It is self-operated, pay per use with the charging application, and also using e-wallet for the payment system. There is also battery swap station in Jakarta, but there is a challenge of how to standardize, and there is also a question of standardizing the platform and application for battery swap station. Next. This is the forecast. I hope that this is in line with what Pak Bakara already shown. This is just estimation. We can see here that the number of SPKLU in 2031 will be 1/10 of the number of EV. Next. This is the business scheme again, already been shown by Pak Bakara. So there is a battery swap for two-wheelers and a charging station for the cars as well as a two-wheelers. And we have also provided the charge-in application for giving comfort to EV users to charge and to use the payment system as they go. Next. What are the features of the EV charge or charge-in? Starting from payment, we can see also the SPKLU mapping information. So where is it is located, how to control the charging and how to monitor. And also we can see the historical of charging and also the EVC has management. We also provide the incentive program to boost the use of the electric vehicle, starting from a discount on the upgrading of the power on the customers. Also, we provide lower tariff for third parties, as well as the discount tariff for home users. And also we provide some incentive for the third parties who will invest and operate their own charging station. Thanks. What are the challenges? Now, up to now, there is no national development roadmap on the battery EV adoption in Indonesia, and the plug-in connector standards still vary. Yeah. There are Type 2, CCS2, and CHAdeMO, and the cost of investment of the EV charging system are still high, especially for the 3 chargers, and the price of electric vehicles, we know that still more expensive than the IC one. The last part of my presentation, I would like to show you that we have what we call PLN Mobile. This is the application for giving customer intimacy between PLN and the customer. So everything in one hand, and everything is becoming easier, starting from requesting for power upgrade, new connection, energy use monitoring, as well as token purchase for prepaid meter customers, and billing notification, and even payment for postpaid customers, meter reading by the customer itself, complaint reporting and tracking, notification on power interruption due to planned and forced outage. And also we have the Listriku included on this application as an access to customers on installation request or modification. I think yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I hope that what I have brought here will be useful, and I'm ready for the question and answer session. Please, Ms. Arsha, thank you.
Wow, very delightful information from Pak Doddy. Thank you very much. We are now welcoming Jakarta as a smart city by building smart mobility, joining with local government and developing infrastructure to support e-mobility and electric vehicles. On the application side, we also have charge-in, and for the next, we'll integrate with super apps PLN Mobile as consolidated platform for all PLN services. And for your information, PLN Mobile now is downloaded more than 7 million users and become the top 3 business apps on Google platform after Zoom and Google. Well, Once more reminding all the participants here, you can submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into Q&A chat box on Zoom or via live chat on YouTube at any time. Thank you for Mr. Doddy and Mr. K for inspiring us and give your applause by clicking virtual applause in your Zoom platform. Okay, it's time for the first time Q&A sessions. We are now going to take questions from chat box on Zoom and live chat on YouTube. We invite Mr. Doddy and Mr. K to switch on your camera. And as a reminder, the webinar participants can still submit questions through the chat box on Zoom and live chat on YouTube. Well, I will read the question coming from to Mr. Lee type, Morris Tarigan from Larsen and Toubro, since EV charging system will apply DC system, how big the impact of system unbalance or power quality issues to the networks and how to mitigate them? Thank you. Maybe you can answer first, Mr. K, for this question.
Yes. So we get the information from the EMS, and so it really depends on how many chargers we install actually to the site. So now in Seoul, we are doing some proof of concept testing at the apartment. So there is around about 40 parking slots, and each slot will have the our smart outlet charge installed. And now we're trying to operate that with the availability of the electricity from the apartment. So in Korea, the electricity capacity normally determined when the building was built. So for example, there is 100 house in one apartment. Normally, the whole apartment will have about 500 kilowatt limit in terms of the electricity capacity. So if you install, for example, the AC chargers like a 7 kilowatt, maybe 10, then it means that 70 kilowatt electricity should be available, but practically it's not easy to get that kind of available, electricity in apartment. So we want our system will get the available electricity. In total, the electricity usage from the tied EMS system, and we distribute into the our outlet, including outlet and the AC chargers. So we the availability of the electricity. We can adjust to the different environment. That's my answer.
Okay, clear enough, I think. I'll move to Pak Doddy Pangaribuan. I will read the question from Ibnu Hasan. Has there been any privately owned SPKLU, swasta? How is PLN's plan on involving private entities for provision of SPKLU?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Actually, there are some business schemes between PLN and the, let's say, investors for operating or for investment on the SPKLU or we can say EVCS or EV charging system. Actually, there are two big options here. The first one is that the interested participant can cooperate with PLN directly. So in this case, that this utility or this business entity can use the business license of PLN to selling the electricity. And the second one is that the interested parties can apply the license by itself to the government, and then buying only electricity from PLN. And those two schemes now in the process of finalization of the regulations, but I can guarantee that the schemes is very interesting. I mean, it's very competitive. For example, the investor or the operator can sell the electricity up to 2,400 rupiah per kWh to the end user or to the EV owner, and they can buy the electricity as low as 740 rupiah per kilowatt hour. So there is almost 1,700 rupiah margin there. As for if they choose to cooperate with the PLN, meaning that they don't want to have the license by themselves, so there are some arrangement that we can make. Yeah. Who will, let's say, look for the locations, who will invest on the equipments, and then who will be the one who operate or doing the maintenance. So, and also we require them to comply with our application that call charging, and with the charging it will be much easier to manage, as well as how to share the let's say the revenue or profit. I hope this answers the questions.
Okay, thank you, Pak Doddy. Private parties who wish to engage in SPKLU business are required to have UPTL and wilayah usaha ya, business area. Will there be any special treatment for obtaining this specifically for SPKLU?
Will be issued by the government. So for those who are interested, they can go directly to the government. If they don't want to have such that application, they can just go directly to us, to PLN, using our license. It will be much easier.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I will continue to Mr. K. The question is from Arik Budiman, PLN Batam. Very interesting with EV, which of course can reduce operational costs for fossil fuels into a combination of new renewable energy, thus creating a more efficient and environmentally friendly life. I ask what steps in your country to give an encouragement to the community to start switching to the use of EVs. EVs are more attractive than conventional vehicles.
Yes. It's not easy to connect the renewable energy into the real usage. So inside Korea, currently, because of the regulation, it's not easy to sell the renewable energy directly to the consumers. So now the producer of the renewable energy, they should go to the Korea energy sale called the KPX, yes, Korea Power Exchange, and they should go there. And so now it's not easy. Recently, our company got license special license. It's a kind of the sandbox, regulatory sandbox license from the government, and we can sell from the renewable energy to directly to the EV car. So in terms of the government incentive, practically there isn't any incentive for using the renewable energy of the EV car owners. No direct incentive yet, but for the producer of the renewable energy, they are now getting some price incentive when they sell their renewable energy to the KEPCO. It's Korea. It's very similar to the PLN in Indonesia. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Maybe this is last question, but this is to all panelists coming from Hardi Sahruwardi Pertamina. Are we going to implement the reverse engineering in developing the battery or starting from the scratch? Okay, maybe Mr. Doddy can answer first.
Thank you for the questions, but I don't think that it is my authority to answer that. It already been taken care by by the management of Indonesian battery industry. So it's better to ask them by yourself directly. Thank you.
Yeah, because the question is coming from Pertamina. Maybe Mr. K, you can answer the question. Hello, Mr. K.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
What was the last question?
Are we going to implement the reverse engineering in developing the battery or starting from the scratch?
On battery side, actually, I don't understand what are you talking about in reversing engineering. Our company are not working on any battery side.
Yeah, okay.
I don't understand the question.
It's okay. Okay, maybe the question is not correlation, yeah, with your company. I will close for this session question. Thank you very much for Pak Doddy and Mr. K.
Thank you, Arsha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we are now having a break about 10 minutes to enjoy our sponsors video. I will be back immediately afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tide strongly believes the importance of environment protection and energy efficiency in order to achieve a sustainable future for mankind. Thus, our technological commitment will foster mutual betterment of our allied companies, customers, shareholders, and employees. Tide pledges to always hold our management philosophy and values at heart. Until now, the meter readers have had to do manual meter reading. This existing manual process is time and money consuming work. This makes it hard for us to detect blackout and manage energy demands. And it makes us hard to manage loss during transmission and distribution. As a result, this existing manual process makes grid unsmarter. But TOT's end-to-end AMI solutions will connect the user with utility companies. TOT's intelligent AMI solutions will solve many problems from the existing manual process. We can reduce time and money spent metering manually. We can manage blackout and loss during distribution. We can do demand response, TOU. Finally, we can make grid smarter. AMI service. Meter reading information of household is call-seated by modem and DCU. There are two types of smart meter, internal and external. Smart meter sends metering data to modem via serial communication. Modem sends metering data to DCU via PLC communication. DCU sends metering data to server via fiber optic and cellular network. On-time monitoring and detection of electrical loss. TOU, time of USC flexible tariffs. Connectivity to electric vehicle charging system. Connection of renewable energy and battery with bidirectional metering. Reliable collection rate improving, monitoring of power quality. Making grid smarter and more efficient. A hidden champion in the energy IoT solution industry. Tide.
Saat ini, segalanya cepat, segalanya mudah, segalanya praktis. Semudah jari Anda menekan ke sebuah tombol. Kami menemani Anda dalam setiap kemudahan itu.
Di tengah persaingan industri digital yang semakin pesat, kami terus berkomitmen untuk memberikan pelayanan prima, sehingga kami bisa menjadi pilihan utama sebagai penyedia layanan di industri teknologi informasi dan komunikasi nasional.
Didirikan pada tahun 2000, Icon Plus pada awalnya berfokus untuk mendukung teknologi dan sistem informasi PT PLN Persero dalam proses bisnis ketenagalistrikan dari hulu ke hilir.
Kami tidak hanya bereaksi terhadap perubahan, tetapi kami menciptakannya. Dari mulai komoditas jaringan sebagai dukungan terbaik bagi ketenagalistrikan,
kami mampu membangun kompetensi yang kuat dalam layanan strategis, terutama dalam hal konektivitas, ketenagalistrikan, dan juga multisektor lainnya. Saat ini, kami menjadi perusahaan yang digerakkan oleh teknologi dan kompetensi untuk membuat ekosistem digital terpusat dengan platform Smart Nation terintegrasi.
Kami menyediakan layanan untuk solusi konektivitas, solusi akses internet, solusi berbasis infrastruktur telekomunikasi, dan solusi value added service, serta aplikasi dengan tingkat availability dan reliability terbaik kepada pelanggan Icon Plus. Sehingga Icon Plus dapat menjadi one-stop solution provider telekomunikasi di era digital dan modernisasi global.
Kami didukung oleh jaringan yang tersebar luas di seluruh wilayah Jawa, Bali, Sumatera, Sulawesi, dan Kalimantan. Untuk menghadirkan layanan prima, kami memiliki kantor strategik bisnis unit dan kantor-kantor perwakilan di hampir seluruh kota besar di Indonesia. Di samping coverage area yang luas, kami juga memiliki ultra broadband untuk memastikan konektivitas pelanggan menjangkau seluruh wilayah dengan kecepatan tinggi.
Dalam hal penyediaan solusi konektivitas jaringan untuk kebutuhan komunikasi data bagi pelanggan yang menghubungkan berbagai titik lokasi geografis yang berbeda, kami menghadirkan iConnect. iConnect memiliki keunggulan mendukung kapasitas besar, kecepatan tinggi, secure, dan upgradable.
Dalam penyediaan solusi akses internet, kami mempersembahkan Icon Web. Layanan akses internet tanpa batas waktu dan kuota yang didukung oleh teknologi serat optik. Koneksi yang cepat, stabil, dan jangkauan yang luas memungkinkan pelanggan berkomunikasi dengan intensitas tinggi.
Untuk memberikan solusi berbasis infrastruktur telekomunikasi, Icon Plus berkomitmen menyediakan layanan untuk keamanan data pelanggan dengan dukungan data center tier 3 yang berlokasi di dalam negeri. Icon Base akan memudahkan pelanggan dalam menjalankan bisnis secara mudah dan efisien.
Untuk mendukung proses bisnis terintegrasi pelanggan dalam penyediaan pelayanan terbaik, Icon Apps hadir sebagai solusi value added service yang telah teruji dalam mendigitalisasi dan membantu proses bisnis PT PLN Persero. Untuk dapat memberikan pelayanan prima bagi lebih dari 70 juta pelanggan PLN melalui Customer Information System. Saat ini, Icon Apps juga telah berkontribusi besar untuk kemajuan pelanggan.
Kami siap menjadi mitra terbaik yang bisa memberikan kepastian untuk kemajuan bersama dan terus menjadi lebih baik.
Visi kami menjadi penyedia solusi teknologi informasi dan komunikasi terkemuka di Indonesia berbasis jaringan melalui pemanfaatan aset strategis.
Icon Plus, we speak beyond connectivity.
Well, we continue to our next agenda, which is a presentation of Mr. Thomas Herrero Diaz from the World Bank. Thomas is a civil engineer and holds a master's in transport, logistics, and mobility from Universitat Politecnica de Catalunya. He also holds a master in international business administration. Thomas worked for Transport Global Practice, where he supports the transport agenda in Indonesia and Kosovo. Prior to joining the World Bank over 3 years, Thomas worked in transport infrastructure projects to achieve more sustainable transport, an innovative logistics system, and reduce the climate change effect in several countries, including Spain, Morocco, China, Indonesia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. He is currently as a transport consultant. Okay. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Thomas Herrero Diaz from the World Bank to deliver a presentation. So please, Mr. Thomas Herrero Diaz, the Zoom is yours.
Thanks, Bu Haryadi. And selamat sore Bapak-Bapak dan Ibu-Ibu. And thank you to the Indonesian Electrical Power Society for your kind invitation to participate in this webinar. As Bu Haryadi mentioned, my name is Thomas Herrero, and I am a transport consultant at the World Bank in Indonesia. And currently, I am co-leading the implementation of a technical assignment to support the development of a roadmap to promote the adoption of e-mobility in the mass transit systems of the cities supported by the Indonesia Mass Transit Program that I will explain later. Could you please share my presentation? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, my presentation will have 3 main points. In the first place, I will briefly present the mass transit lending operation being prepared by the World Bank and the associated e-mobility technical assignment. And in the second place, I will present the methodology that we have used to identify the main policy gaps in the e-mobility sector in Indonesia, with a focus on the public transport. And lastly, I will present a set of recommendations based on international good practices to bridge the policy gaps. Next, please. So I will start with the introduction. Next slide, please. The World Bank has been supporting BAPENAS and the Ministry of Transportation over the last years to design a national level program to enhance urban mobility on the largest Indonesian cities. And this is the Indonesia Mass Transit Program. We are currently preparing a lending operation to the government of Indonesia to support the rollout of this program. And the first phase of the program will include the development of 2 bus rapid transit systems, or BRTs, in the cities of Bandung and Medan. For these systems, diesel was the default option. Next, please. And in January of this year, we secured funding from 2 donors, from the Mobility and Logistics, or MOLO, Trans Fund, and the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, or SMAT, to procure a consortium of consultants to implement a technical assignment to explore the potential of leapfrog to e-mobility in these 2 BRTs, in Medan and Bandung. This technical assignment is led by the Institute of Transportation and Development Policy, or ITDP, and it is supported by the International Council of Clean Transportation, or ICCT. So we will produce 2 main pieces of work, and the first one is an assessment of the Indonesian regulatory framework and relevant to e-mobility to identify the main policy gaps and to propose options to bridge them. This will be focused on mass transit, and this will be the piece that I will briefly present today. Subsequently, build on this assessment, a roadmap to adopt e-mobility in the BRTs of Bandung and Medan will be also developed under this technical assignment. Next slide, please. I will briefly explain the methodology that we have followed to conduct the policy gaps assessment. Next. So firstly, we have reviewed the Indonesian regulatory framework, and also we have carried out a number of virtual interviews with the main stakeholders, such as the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Transportation, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, or the Ministry of Finance, to identify policy gaps. As you know, the electrification of the transport sector in Indonesia is being led by the central government. We analyzed the most relevant national level policies that some of them have been already mentioned by Bakara and Pangaribuan. And also we took a look at the provincial level policies. Next slide, please. In parallel with this assessment, we also review international good practices on e-mobility adoption in mass transit systems to identify key lessons learned that could be replicable to Indonesia. In particular, we look at Shenzhen in China, California in the US, Kolkata in India, Santiago in Chile, and Bogota in Colombia. And these 5 countries have very different levels of economic and industrial development, but all of them are leaders in mobility adoption implementation. They are now not only showing pilots, but scaling up e-bus adoption by deploying hundreds and even thousands of e-buses. We conclude that we can divide these cases into 2 main groups, as you can see in this slide. And the first one includes Shenzhen, California, and Calcutta. In these cases, the cities receive very strong monitoring incentives and also mandates to shift to public fleet to e-bus were in place, and also other indirect incentives were provided. The second group, which includes Chile and Colombia, don't have access to strong direct incentives, but they changed their traditional procurement and contract structures to make a business case out of public transportation. And next slide, please. So after reviewing the Indonesian policy framework and considering the global case studies that I mentioned and some additional case studies, we identified the main policy gaps. Some of them were also mentioned by Pangaribuan, and we decided to classify them into 5 main categories. So the first category are the direct incentives. The second one are the indirect or non-fiscal incentives. And the third category is the charging infrastructure development. The fourth one is the mandates to promote the electrification of public fleets. Lastly is the business models to create bankable mobility projects and attract private sector investors. So due to the time constraints, I will not explain each of the policy gaps, but if you want to have more information on that, please feel free to reach out to me. We can go to the next slide. Without further ado, I would like to present a set of recommendations to bridge the policy gaps that we have identified in Indonesia. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are 5 main groups of policy gaps that I will explain now. Next. We can start with the direct or monetary incentives. In just a decade, China has become the world's largest market for EVs. Today, the country accounts for half of the world EVs and more than 90% of e-buses. And this is largely due to the China's forward-looking industrial policy to develop the industry as an economic sector of strategic importance. In the last decade, the Chinese government provided large subsidies to support pilot programs, and cities participating in pilots were required to match central government subsidies and also to build the charging infrastructure. The subsidies were meant to offset the upfront cost difference between EV and conventional vehicles. And at the peak of the program, e-buses received subsidies for up to $76,000 US per vehicle. But in the past years, China's central government has revised these subsidies and gradually is cutting the overall level of central government funding to support e-buses. In 2013, India launched a national mobility program setting an ambitious target to sell between 6 to 7 million of e-vehicles by 2020. That program laid the groundwork for future policies, including the faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, or FAME scheme, that Indian cities, including Calcutta, were able to take advantage of. The first phase of this program was adopted by the Indian government in 2015, with a total envelope of around 130 million of US dollar. Under this program, the government provides subsidies up to 60% of the cost of the EVs. In particular, in the case of e-buses, the first phase of this program supported the introduction of 425 e-buses. And the second phase of this program came into effect in April of 2019 with around 1.2 billion of US dollars. And in this case, the support for e-buses could reach up to 69,000 US dollars. Also in California, the transit agencies are encouraged to take advantage of state funding opportunities to deploy e-buses. There are a number of different programs, but some of them provide monetary grants to e-buses of up to 80,000 US dollars. In addition, there are other direct operational subsidies which might include lower or subsidized e-tariffs, also the introduction of time of use tariff or dynamic tariffs, or also the reduction in the cost of the parking or toll roads, as we can see in other countries in the world. Next, please. So these three case studies show that strong fiscal incentives are crucial to lower the cost of e-buses. It is recommended the introduction of a robust fiscal incentive program for EV adoption in Indonesia, and also it is highly recommended the harmonization of the incentives between all the provinces in Indonesia. And to compensate the fiscal...
You have 5 minutes more. You have 5 minutes more.
Okay, so yeah, let's go to the next slide. Next, please. So non-fiscal incentives provide also benefits to the consumers. We have seen in other countries that there are a number of potential options, such as the establishment of zero or low emission zones, as we have seen in London, or preferential parking schemes for EVs, as we have seen in California or in Spain, and also exemptions from road access in congestion or environmental-based vehicle mobility restrictions, as we have seen in Beijing. Next, please. And in Indonesia, the review of local level policies show that a more robust set of indirect incentives are needed. This could include a national scheme for the adoption of low emission zones, especially in the largest cities. Also, the adoption of preferential parking access as a national policy, or allowing EVs to freely operate when mobility restrictions are in place, for instance, in Jakarta. Next, please. And the review of international case studies also show that at early stages of the EV deployment, a strong support from the government is needed, especially to develop the charging infrastructure. We have seen this in a lot of countries as China, UK, or France, and also the engagement of the private sector is highly recommended. For instance, Transport for London is partnering with a number of private utility companies and automakers to create a network of charging infrastructure. Also, there is a similar example in Japan, where the Development Bank of Japan is partnering with a number of automakers also to deploy a significant network of charging infrastructure. Next, please. There is a very interesting case study in Stockholm that I will not explain because I don't have sufficient time, but again, I can share with you if you are interested. Next slide, please. In Indonesia, due to the relatively small size of the EV market, the construction of charging infrastructure is still considered as a high-risk investment. As we have seen in the previous case studies, at the early stages of the market growth, a strong national support is needed. In all the cases, it is important to make programs which are transparent, are accessible to EV owners and also to the main industry stakeholders. The government involvement also can be seen as a strong support of the industry, and in subsequent phases, this can be reduced. Also, it is highly recommended to enhance the enabling environment to promote private sector participation, especially in the long term. Next, please. So the countries that we analyze show that all of them have a very high level political commitment at national level to reduce air pollution. They have established very ambitious targets, and subsequently they have translated these targets into a number of mandates for the electrification of the public fleets. Next slide, please. So in Indonesia, there are some support from some of the regulations that are in place to do this, but further development of the policies is needed. We would like to recommend the government of Indonesia to develop and adopt mandates for EV purchases to accelerate the EV transition. And also in the first phase, maybe these mandates can be focused on public transit fleets, including buses. And in addition, these mandates would also provide a strong signal to the manufacturers that the government is strongly supporting the industry. Next slide, please. In Bogotá and Santiago, we have seen that some innovative business models gave very good results, in particular, splitting the asset ownership and operation roles to reduce the risk to investor, and also expanding the contract duration to better bear the financial loads of more expensive technology. For instance, in Chile, contracts for e-buses are set for 15 years, which is 5 years more than the contract for conventional buses. Next, please. So the comparison of business model between Latin America and Indonesia suggests that there are a number of opportunities for consideration of the government, such as extending the contract period for bus operations. In Indonesia, the longest contract period found is for 7 years in the Transjakarta, and in some cases it's only for 1 year. Ideally, the duration of the contract for e-buses should be around 15 years. Also, the adoption of split models for e-bus public fleets operation and ownership would be also explored by the government. Next, please. So I would like to summarize the main recommendations to bridge the policy gaps to accelerate the adoption of mobility. So the first one is to provide strong monitoring incentives for the electrification of mass transits fleets, and also provide stronger fiscal incentives for EV and these incentives for conventional vehicles. Provide a broader offer of indirect incentives. Also develop and promote the adoption of mass transit and government fleets electrification mandates, and revise the current mass transit contracting practices to extend contract periods for e-buses for 15 years, and also explore the adoption of split models for e-bus public fleets operation and ownership. Next, so should you have any additional question on my presentation, please feel free to reach out to me at my email address, which you can see in this slide. And thank you very much, and over to you, Haryadi.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I think all participants got another inspiration and best practices from your presentation, in which incentive directly and indirectly is one of the policy to accelerate e-mobility adoption in several countries. Well, so let's move forward to our next speaker, which is a presentation coming from Mr. Ignatius Rendroyoko from PT Indonesia Kamnet Plus, Icon Plus. But before the presentation begins, I will read a brief profile of Mr. Ignatius Rendroyoko. Mr. Yoko received bachelor degree from Bandung Institute of Technology in Electrical Engineering and master degree from Monash University in Engineering. And his career began at PT PLN Persero in 1995. And in 2018, he became a general manager of the shared service unit for electricity at PT Indonesia Kamnet Plus. Then 2019, he worked as a general manager of PT PLN Persero for the East Nusa Tenggara region. And currently, he is a director of electricity and wholesale business in PT Indonesia Kamnet Plus or Icon Plus. So I would like to welcome Mr. Ignatius Rendroyoko to deliver a presentation, and the Zoom is yours.
Okay, thank you, Bu Haryadi. Thank you for the introduction. I would like to share my presentation first. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and all the speakers for this event today. Let me introduce myself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ignatius Rendroyoko. I am now working as the Director of Electricity and Wholesale Business for Icon Plus. Let me introduce Icon Plus first. Icon Plus is one of the subsidiary company of PT PLN Persero, and we are taking care of the information technology and high-end communication technology for supporting electricity business provided by PLN. And at the previous session, Pak Bakara and Pak Doddy Pangaribuan has clearly explained and discussed about all the regulation, all the policies, all the future plan of EV charging infrastructure of PLN. And now, this time, I would like to take the opportunity to discuss a little bit at medium and low end level at the practical things. The title of my presentation is Icon Plus Contributions in EV Charging Application and Support Technologies. Okay, the first thing here, we are from Icon Plus is now focusing on how we can support the EV charging technologies by considering these two main things. The first is the increase of the EV sales year by year, starting 2019, and the future will be in 2025. The government target for EV charging, EV sales, electric vehicle sales in Indonesia is reaching almost 2,000 units, 20,000 units. And then at our side, PLN now is trying to provide the infrastructure of EV charging by providing the EV charging station, or we can call it here is SPKLU and SPBKLU for EV charging station and battery swap. That at this moment, at this year, the SPKLU that's already connected to the charging application is still 24 sites, and we have target in this year will reaching 168 sites, and in 2025 we have government target is about 2,400 sites all around Indonesia. We have the commitment, and we have also the roadmap to do that things. These are the electric vehicle environment. In this slide, we can see that PLN and with us, Icon Plus, we are working together to prepare to provide EV ecosystem that supported by 8 factors. The first is electricity system. Second is infrastructure and technology. The third is home charging facility, home charging technology. The fourth is services, and then emission reduction program, battery management, charging station program, and also the power generation system. That's at this moment, the power generation capacity provided by PLN is quite enough to supply all the customer requirement all around Indonesia. Here is the EV charging environment. We know that EV charging environment activities of the people is start from our homes, and then we have activities in the public places, in the office, and in this or around this places in the cities. So in this by considering these matters, we are trying to prepare the EV charging stations on rightly on that places, on that sites. In the slides, we can see that government is preparing the regulation. EV users is provided by all the supports from government from government industry. They will have incentive to purchase EV tax, stimulus for customers, electricity customers that has EV electric vehicles. If they want to upgrade their capacity of electrics in their houses, and then they will have the incentive discount on charging at home charging at a certain point. And then for the manufacturers, they are also preparing the industry, battery industry, EV charging, EV production, and then spare parts, and also the SPKLU or EV charging stations infrastructure. And then also the technology is prepared by using the latest technology. In this case, this is the customer journey of how the customers can have their electric vehicle being charged in home charging or also in the public places. So the first thing, the car owner, they have to do registration, and whenever they register their electric vehicle, their data will be directly connected to their customer ID. So all the incentive, all the support facilities can be connected directly to the ID of customer ID. And then in home charging equipment, the customers that will use EV charging in their homes in the specific certain period of time, they will have incentive of the electricity tariff that used to charge their electric vehicle. And then in the matters of the integration of to the charge-in application, the customers will be supported by home charging equipment commissioning, and then connected to the using RFID, and then all the electricity usage will be transferred to the charge-in server and will be connected to the PLN customer information system and billing system. So all the data will be combined into one, and we can have the good and proper complete data of the customers. And then for PLN especially, if the customers willing to do the home charging at a certain period of time, is usually is around outside of peak hours, PLN will be gaining benefits by demand side management, because at the off-peak times, the load requirement will be used by this charging of the electric vehicle. This is the how the process of the home charging by car owner, electric vehicle owner. So all the customers that use the electric vehicle, they can charge directly using the equipment, using the special equipment directly for their cars, their electric vehicle. And all the data will be combined into one using the charging application and connected into the customer service management system and also the PLN customer information and billing system. We call it here AP2T. And by using this mechanism, all the discount, all the incentive of the tariff discount can be given, can be dedicated to the home charging customers. This is the charge-in application. We can see here that it's 4 users at our charge-in application can have the capability in controlling and managing the SPKLU and also the home charging. You can use this application for users that can give benefits to the car owner users and also the service provider and also for PLN. This is the once again, this is the concept of the charge-in application. The EV customer can use this application to charge their EV electric vehicles in public places and also in the homes that can connect it directly to the customer information system, PLN customer information system. This is the updated progress of the charge-in application. It's already downloaded 5,000 and including 1,200 car owners and 52 kilowatt hours energy sales with revenue of 102 billion. And this condition is based on the our application dashboard. This is the roadmap. This is the timeline of charge-in progress. The first, we start the charge-in application in 2019 by running tests and launching because we have a good cooperation with PLN Disjaya as our partners in developing this application. And in this year, we have a plan to integrate this charge-in application into our PLN application, PLN mobile. This is the all the features of the mobile apps, the charge-in mobile apps, and web application of the charge-in, and all is connected to all the PLN application at the certain services. This is the charge-in application. You can download from Play Store or from App Store. You can use and install, and by using that application, you can know which the locations of the EV charging station and do the electric vehicle charging directly to your electric vehicles. So whatever the electric car is, please use the charging application charge-ins, because this is the one and only PLN application for electric vehicle charging. These are the other application in the world, and we are here. We are present here as one of the electric vehicle application in Indonesia. Thank you so much. That's all my presentation. I thank you for all your attention. And if there is any question, comments, or suggestion, we can talk later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yoko. Very interesting. how charge-in is integrated with AP2T. AP2T is information and billing systems. And by integrating them, it will become interface on customer side so that customers can be monitoring and getting direct incentive while they are charging outside peak hours at night, around 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Great application. I think we are really optimistic about the future of our electric vehicles ecosystem in Indonesia after your insight, Pak Yoko. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, okay, then let's move to our next speaker, Mr. Mustafa Wajid from IEEMA on strategies for increasing e-mobility adoption and India perspective. But before the presentation begins, allow us to read profile of Mr. Mustafa Wajid. Mustafa Wajid stumbled into an entrepreneurial career in 1977 at age 16. Wow. When he designed and manufactured his first power capacitor in Bangalore, India. This was the business inception point for a small startup company, Meher Capacitors. Prior to this, he attended Bishop Cotton Boys School, followed by then Christ College and graduated with distinction as an electrical engineer in 1984 from UVCE, while developing new capacitor technologies, product, and contributing to growing the company. He is currently the chairman of the e-mobility and charging infra division of IEEMA and steering committee of the future of mobility and transport panel of the IET. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Mr. Mustafa Wajid. So, Mr. Mustafa, the stage is yours.
Yeah, could you share the presentation, please? Yeah, next slide. The next slide, please. Yeah, as we say in India, namaste to everybody. I thank the organizers of this event for having given us this opportunity to share what is happening in India on this subject of e-mobility. We have 4 topics which I would like to cover today. We are not going to discuss about any product or any other sort of specific electrical engineering technology issues. This is a wider presentation. We will look at dynamics of e-mobility. We will look at policy interventions that are required, particularly when we talk about charging infrastructure. I think e-mobility is also coming up for some interesting disruption, and we will take a look at technology perspectives and what kind of strategies should we make. We will try to summarize them. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's spend some time on understanding the dynamics of e-mobility. This is, of course, true in many parts of the world, but in India, since I come from India, I'm specifically mentioning it as our experience. The corona pandemic has had an impact. Some trends have clearly emerged. There is a growing preference for using personal vehicles because there seems to be a hesitancy to use public transport. This is because of the infection risk and so many other factors. The other thing is the work from home has increased the online commerce activity, and the number of people ordering things online on a daily basis has gone up many, many times higher than what it used to be before the pandemic. The logistics and delivery segment is therefore expanding rapidly. These are 2 very important impact on mobility from a pandemic point of view. Coming to the policy interventions that have already been done, laws and regulations have been changed in India. My earlier speaker from the World Bank touched upon it. We have a combination of incentives and lower taxes, and that is, we want to reduce the cost difference between the EVs and the ICE vehicles. This has worked to our advantage. We have also implemented in India very strict emission norms on ICE vehicles, which means that the price of ICE vehicles has gone up by 10 to 15%. This has happened but recently in 2020. There are new laws that are coming in to require scrapping of 15-year-old vehicles, which are in the pipeline. Let us now look at briefly the economics and the update of the EV market in India. We must remember that the economics of EV have 6 variables. The first is the EV cost. The second is the ease and the cost of fueling, that is the cost of charging. What is the annual usage in terms of kilometer per year? What are the maintenance expenses on such electric vehicles? What are the financing costs? Because today financing solutions, very innovative financing solutions are possible. And therefore, I think this is an area which requires a lot more thinking. I'm sure that there are a lot of solutions out there, but they will evolve. And finally, as is very important in ICE vehicles, what can be the resale value of an electric vehicle? These 6 factors decide what is the economics of an electric vehicle. That's why I'm calling it a multivariable function. It actually becomes a bit of a differential equation, but that's a separate subject. I don't want to overly technically go into that subject today. In India, what we see today is that EVs have become more economical than ICE vehicles in some particular applications. Partly the reason for this is that the price of petrol and diesel in India, what we pay is 2 times higher than what you pay in Indonesia. So that's a factor that has also helped in the EV vehicles becoming more economical in some applications. EV adoption in 2 and 3 wheelers, as also in the electric buses, is growing in India. Many brands of electric cars are now available. However, larger electric vehicles also need to be a part of the discussion. When I'm saying larger, it means trucks, intercity buses, etc. Of course, the railway is already electrified, so I'm not going into that. That's already a part of electric mobility. So there are new technologies emerging, such as dynamic charging and green hydrogen, etc. Now, it's very important here to remember that we should not substitute petroleum dependency and fossil fuel dependency with some other dependency like lithium dependency. So technologies that can reduce the consumption of batteries or the sizing of batteries, technologies that are green in other ways should also be looked at, and a lot of things are happening there. We will touch more on that in this presentation. Next slide, please. Let's just look at policy interventions. I think this was brought up earlier that there must be a roadmap. And the fundamental thing here is that we cannot consider EV charging as a solution in the society. It has to be considered by governments as an infrastructure topic. Just like how we build roads, we build ports, we build big power plants, EV charging is also an infrastructure topic. A useful reference in this is the master plan that is prepared by Germany and activated about 1.5 years ago. And they have, it's a very elaborate plan, lays out very clearly what is to be done in the next 10 years, not just inside the home, but also on public infrastructure, commercial buildings, hospitals, offices, and so on and so forth. Of course, they have done it keeping in mind their country and their systems and their, I would say, their ecosystem. Each country has to finalize its own master plan. And like in Germany, they have shown the way, they have backed up this master plan by legislation and funding. Germany has passed an act called the Fast Charging Act in Parliament. They have allotted a budget of $4.5 billion for funding this master plan in the first phase. It is very aggressive. It's very well coordinated implementation is happening. I would strongly urge those people in the policy domain and those who are interested to go to that link which I have given. And obviously that is something that can be used as a very interesting document. They have a department now called the Nationale Leitstelle, whose web link I have given, and that's also a very useful resource to look at how policy making can evolve. Okay, but now the important thing is that we need to provide for new technologies. We always look at electric vehicle charging as a bunch of static chargers which are installed in the electricity distribution system. That is definitely required. There is no doubt about that. Electricity utilities will obviously play a major role. But is our charging infrastructure going to be future-proof? That's a question that needs a very serious thought process. Petroleum companies will have a very important role to play. Why? Because green hydrogen is definitely emerging as a fuel in the future. Currently in California, it's available at retail fuel pumps at about $13 a kilogram. 1 kilogram of hydrogen can take a Toyota Mirai, according to the publication of in their brochure, it will give you about 110 kilometers. Somebody in the Middle East is talking about hydrogen at $4 per kilogram. Somebody in Australia is talking at $2 per kilogram. And these are matters that will happen. The petroleum companies will obviously become an important stakeholder in the electricity vehicle networks for energy delivery. And I am introducing this term called energy delivery because I don't want it to get restricted to charging, which is the traditional approach that we have been following as electrical engineers. The other important technology that is coming out is dynamic charging. Now, this is because this is a situation where I can keep driving and I keep charging while I am mobile, that is charging on the go. This has already been tried out in several countries. It has, pilots have been very successful. We in India from EMA have been pushing for the trying out these pilots in India. What does this do? It can reduce the size of the onboard battery by 50% or more. This will reduce the cost of the electric vehicle. It will also reduce the demand or consumption of batteries, which is an important thing because, as I said earlier, we cannot substitute fossil fuel dependency with lithium dependency. So these are issues that will come up. Therefore, policy interventions on charging or energy delivery for mobility have to take into account becoming future-proof. While utilities are going to play a very important role, petroleum companies and road management companies will also have to play a role. The wireless charging systems or the overhead charging systems have to be installed along the highways and also on city roads. Such pilots have been done. In Tel Aviv, for example, there is a city road on which this has been done for several kilometers, and all the buses on that are operating now with batteries which are only about 30% of what they had earlier. So the weight has come down, more passengers can go on the bus, and it is being charged as the bus is traveling on the road. A lot of information is available on the internet. I would recommend everybody to take a look and do some research on this. Next slide, please. Let's look at technology perspectives. These are important because they will influence not only the cost, but also the availability of electric vehicles. So we will start by drive systems, which is the heart of the e-mobility movement. Motor and controller designs and topologies are evolving rapidly. There are two technologies which are now coming in the competing space. One is radial and one is axial flux. There is a lot of work being done on in-wheel motors, where the entire motor will be sitting in the wheel of the vehicle. There is a very strong movement towards minimizing the use of rare earth, because rare earth, again, is a very tricky material, not easily available, and therefore we have to find ways of reducing its usage. Heat transfer is another important issue, particularly in tropical environments like Indonesia, India, and so on and so forth. New techniques are required for boosting efficiencies. Otherwise, we will have problems, particularly at high ambient temperatures. Battery chemistries are evolving rapidly, and battery management is therefore also evolving. Many options are becoming available, and now rapid charging in a few minutes has become a reality. We are seeing this in India in some trials of buses on the roads, where we are able to charge a 100 kilowatt-hour battery in about 6 minutes. Now, this is also possible in two-wheelers. It requires fresh thinking. It may bring into question the economics compared to swapping, etc., etc. But rapid charging has already become a reality. Dynamic charging for moving vehicles on the roads and highways, which I mentioned earlier. Pilot projects have been done in Europe, in the US, in Israel, and several other places. There are two approaches being taken. One is overhead energy delivery for heavy vehicles like trucks and buses via pantographs, which are mounted on the top of the vehicle, similar to the technology that is used in railways. Wireless charging has a different approach. The transmitters are embedded below the road, and the receivers are put on the underside of the moving vehicles. These vehicles could be cars, buses, trucks, any vehicle that is moving on the highway or on the city road. Of course, two-wheelers, it may be difficult to do, but four-wheelers, definitely this is possible, and a lot of companies are working on that. Hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicles have entered some markets already. Now, there's an important issue here. It is green hydrogen which is coming in the picture. And what is green hydrogen? Green hydrogen is that which is produced by electrolysis, where there is no carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide emission. How do you produce hydrogen from electrolysis? You have to use water. Both Indonesia and India have massive coastline where seawater is easily accessible. In fact, Indonesia has very large coastline, 7 times bigger than India actually. And if we can find a way of economically electrolyzing seawater to produce hydrogen, that's a different hydrogen economy discussion, but it has a great impact on e-mobility. So retail dispensing of hydrogen fuel is already happening in some places in the world. One can refer to what is happening in California because it's becoming very popular there. The other part of mobility, which
minutes more, Pak Mustafa.
Yeah, the other part of mobility is the autonomous vehicles. Many developments are underway, and also electric powered flight. This is not only drones, it could also be planes. A lot of stuff is happening. I don't want to go into that. It will take a lot more time, maybe some other day. Next slide, please. Yeah, what are the strategies that we should follow for accelerating e-mobility? Each country needs to develop multi-structured roadmaps, focus being fundamental and strategic objectives, policy objectives. For example, petroleum dependency being reduced is a strategic objectives. We have to consider our socio-economic, environmental, and climatic conditions, where we look at 2- and 3-wheelers, for example, are very high on the road in India. I suspect it's not very different in Indonesia. Safety and convenience of citizens. We should ensure alignment with the technology evolution that is happening in the mobility domain. And we should have environmental and investment-friendly recycling policies. It's very nice to talk about recycling, but unless the policies are structured properly, investment will not go into recycling. Government needs to legislate new laws and regulations as per these roadmaps with budgets for infra creation, and very importantly, safety and technical standards to be established country-wise, because there are going to be many differences in the mobility approach depending on where the countries are located. What is done in Norway cannot be followed completely in Indonesia or India. We have to have specific local factors. The automobile industry, electrical industry, and digital industry will have to deepen mutual engagement. This is to ensure smooth and rapid adoption or acceleration of e-mobility. Finally, adoption is a function of consumer acceptance and market dynamics. A variety of measures are required to strengthen this, because without consumer and social acceptance, mobility adoption cannot be accelerated. This is going to be a major responsibility of all stakeholders, and that's a discussion for another day. I don't want to go into that. Next slide, please. Yeah, with that, I would like to conclude. Terima kasih banyak, as they say in Indonesia. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Stay safe in this corona environment. May God bless everybody. Thank you. That's just a last slide which you can circulate. This is a German Leitstelle slide which I just added. It might interest other people. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih Pak Mustafa. Thank you very much. Your experiences and background, we can learn a lot in any perspective of accelerating e-mobility adoption and how policy intervention are needed to push EV ecosystem in India. Okay, it's time for our second Q&A session. We are now going to take questions from chat box on Zoom and live chat on YouTube. We invite Mr. Thomas Herrero-Diaz, Mr. Ignatius Vendroyoko, and Mr. Mustafa Wajid to switch on your camera, please. And as a reminder, the webinar participants can still submit questions through the chat box on Zoom and live chat on YouTube. Please also fill in the presence form posted on chat room Zoom and live chat on YouTube. You will receive an e-certificate for this webinar participation via email. The webinar presentation material will also be sent to your email. Okay, let's start. For the first question is for Thomas from the attendees on our mailbox. Firstly, is it possible to work with the concept of sharing economy for the charging ecosystem build?
Thank you for your question. The concept of sharing economy has came to stay, and as we have seen, is adopted in a number of different sectors, including the transportation. I think that, as I mentioned during my presentation, we would like to encourage the participation of the private sector in the deployment of charging infrastructure in Indonesia, And in particular, the adoption of this sharing economic concept could be very interesting for the country. And we have seen some pilots in some European countries, as Europe, that in 2018, they started a pilot. The name of the pilot is Share and Shared, where it is possible that the owners of the EVs can use charging infrastructure which belongs to other private person. This platform is still, as I mentioned, in a pilot phase, but is something that could be replicable in Indonesia. But as also I mentioned during my presentation, the main challenge could be the institutional framework, and in particular, the tax framework. If we in Indonesia use this concept of the sharing economy for the charging infrastructure, we should provide a strong regulatory framework which will regulate how the taxes for using this infrastructure and using the energy will be paid. So, to sum up, I think it's something that we should encourage the government to explore, but in parallel, also we should encourage the government to develop the institutional framework of e-mobility in the country. Thank you.
Interesting. Could you please elaborate more on harmonizing in the incentive across the province?
Okay, and thank you for your question. I'm sorry that during my presentation I didn't have sufficient time for explaining this. So currently in Indonesia, there are some cities as Jakarta, and also there are some provinces as West Java or Bali that they are already offering some kind of incentives to the adoption of EVs. So, for instance, in Jakarta, the transfer fee can be reduced if EVs are adopted. Or, for instance, also free parking for EVs is offered in some neighborhoods of the city. But in other provinces, such as North Sumatra, we have seen that there is not this kind of incentives. So this is why we would like to recommend the government of Indonesia to develop a program which is consistent among all the provinces of the country to give a strong signal to the market that the government is seriously supporting the development of the EV market. So hope that this addressed your question.
Okay, thank you for the response, Mr. Thomas. And the second question is for Pak Ignatius Rendroyoko. This is from PT Jemlo Cable Company. Most charging is done at home and work. What the types are widely used in Indonesia, and how do I order them too?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Based on the data and based on the best practices in the world, more than 80% of the EV charging owner is using home charging to charge their electric vehicle. In this case, that's why Icon Plus is making decision to contribute actively in developing this charge-in application. At this moment, at least 6 electric vehicle brands is already in. Is already working with us together. It can be integrated to our application, and with using this, even I can also inform you that Icon Plus give opportunity to all the electric vehicles brands, brands in Indonesia can do together and can cooperate together. We can test and give certificate to the electric vehicles brand to integrate with our charge-in application. I hope that's already answered the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Yoko. What is the most challenging aspect, challenging aspect for Indonesia or PLN to develop EV charging infrastructure?
Okay, the most challenging is the first is we have to have the standards in EV charging. So these standards should be accepted and followed by all the industry manufacturers of the EV charging infrastructures, and also by the electric vehicles brands. We're by considering that more than 80% of the electric vehicles owner will charge their electric vehicles at home during the nighttime. In this case, I think the stages to make the electricity customers and electric vehicles owners to do the electric vehicle home charging is also important. Important to be something like habits or daily activities for them. This will give benefits to all the customers. For customers, they will have a discount tariff, and also for the utilities, it can help it can help the utilities to do the efficiency through flattening the load usage during the nighttime by having the demand side management programs.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's all.
Yes, very interesting, and also can get incentive, yeah, Pak.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And next question. This is for Pak Mustafa. The question posted by Ms. Bakul Munir from PLN. Please explain India Wi-Fi charging system technologies and the strategies for developing them. Thank you.
Yeah, in India, we are looking at two different applications for wireless charging. One is in the urban mass transit system, where electric buses can be charged in semi-dynamic mode at the bus terminals and also at certain bus stops, because buses tend to move gradually at bus terminals because they are waiting for passengers to come on board. So by electrifying a certain section of the road, it is possible to transfer the electricity by wireless high frequency methods from below the road to the bus. That's one use case that is being looked at in India. The other use case is to look at electrifying a section of the highway. Currently, the government of India is looking at the highway between Delhi and Mumbai as one of the highways on which to do this pilot project. It may be 50 or 100 kilometers to begin with initially. Of course, the vehicles also have to be capable of absorbing or receiving this power. So we are looking at two technologies for the highway. One is the overhead technology, where you have the electricity coming through the overhead wires, and you have a pantograph mounted on top of the vehicle. And the second technology is, yes, you can have wireless, which is embedded below the road, transferring to receivers, which are on the underside of the moving vehicle. So there are two use cases currently being looked at. Of course, in India, we are little thinking about how to bring it into cities also, but in Europe, because the road system is well organized and the traffic discipline is much better, it's much easier to do. But that's something that we in Asia will have to deal with, because all of us don't follow strict discipline like they do in Europe when we are driving. And also the mix of the vehicles on the roads is very high. We have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, buses, etc. So it can cause some sort of technical challenges. So right now, the wireless charging we're looking at in urban use case is electric buses, and on the highways for trucks and intercity buses. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes. Thank you for response. I think enough, Mr. Mustafa. And maybe this is the last question coming from Bu Heni Pratiwi from PLN Head Office. I would like to ask question to Thomas from World Bank. From what I acknowledge, World Bank helps a lot PLN in the area of upstream policy, such as building new power plant, nor electricity interconnectivity, do World Bank or you have a new approach in order to help improve EV users or improve customers since the price of EV vehicle itself is still expensive compared to regular vehicle?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So yes, under the technical assignment that I mentioned in my presentation, we are planning to look at the regulatory framework, and also we would like to work with the government in order to propose a number of incentives to reduce the cost of EVs in Indonesia. But this is the electrification of, because our technical assignment is especially focused on the mass transit systems, but also our colleagues in IFC, which is the International Finance Corporation, they are currently initiating another technical assignment, which will be focused on all the segments, not only on the public transport. So they just mobilize the consultants. It's a work which is starting now, but also this technical assignment will have a strong component for regulatory review and also to propose recommendations on how to mitigate the higher cost of EVs in Indonesia. I don't know if this addressed your question.
Okay, clear enough. Thank you very much for response, Thomas. Sorry, it was the last question apparently for our last Q&A session due to the time we have. If you still have questions, we didn't have the time to answer on today's webinar, but you can contact speakers at the address shown on their slide presentation. We also have a recording of this webinar on YouTube channel MKI IEPS. Thank you for our today's speakers, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. And last, ladies and gentlemen, due to too fast, I lead photo session before as a request from the organizing committee. We will have again a photo session with all speakers. Hope you don't mind. So please all speakers switch on your camera for a while. I will count down 3, 2, 1 for taking picture. Ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. As mentioned earlier, today's webinar is the 3rd episode of MKI Smart Grid webinar series out of 10 episodes hosted by the Indonesian Electrical Power Society, Masyarakat Ketenagalistrikan Indonesia, taken place in April 2021 to January 2022. It's supported by PT PLN Persero and sponsored by Tide, Huawei, KEPCO, Hitachi, ABB Power Grid, Siemens, ABB Sakti Industri, Trillion, GE Grid Solution, Mitsubishi Power, Icon Plus, and in partnership with Think Smart Grid Friends and Energy Academy Indonesia, EKADIN. On behalf of the Indonesian Electrical Power Society, Masyarakat Ketenagalistrikan Indonesia, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you all in the next episode of MKI Smart Grid webinar series in July 2021 on battery energy storage system. We will keep you all updated on the detail via email. Thank you and have a great rest of your today. Thank you very much. Thank you for all speakers.
you